Picture this. It's 2017. I'm sitting in my rent-stabilized apartment in the East Village in New York City. At that point, it was the apartment I had lived in for over 20 years. I was watching TV like a completely normal person doing completely normal things, and then I hear it. Bang! 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 Three men in plain clothes with a battering ram are trying to break down my neighbor Martin's door. They're screaming his name and he won't open up. So they just ram it open like it's nothing, like doors are optional. Martin died the next day. And that, my friends, was the first domino. I just didn't know it yet. Because nobody tells you that identity theft starts with a battering ram and ends with you losing everything. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself. My name is Grace Elizabeth Mangum, and apparently everyone wants to be me, which is frankly unfortunate because being me has been a lot. Welcome to Everyone Wants to Be Me, Identity Theft Blows. I'm your host, Grace Mangum, and yes, that is the real title of this podcast because when someone steals your identity, uses artificial intelligence to proliferate it, and then systematically dismantles your life, you earn the right to name your show whatever you damn well please. Here's the deal. This podcast exists for one reason. I have been there. Not in a I read about it kind of way, not in it happened to my friend's cousin kind of way. I mean, I have been in it up to my eyeballs, drowning in fraudulent tax bills and spoofed phone numbers and smishing texts and neighbors and a few family members and former close friends who were literally in on it. And I want to tell you how to get out of it, or better yet, how to avoid it entirely. Over the course of this season, which I have lovingly titled Hookers, Cookers, Police, and Thieves, because, well, you'll see, I'm going to walk you through what happened to me, step by excruciating step. We'll talk about the omens that I missed, the red flags I ignored, because who expects their own family and close friends to steal their identity? And I'm going to talk to you about the practical steps that I was eventually able to take to claw my life back. Oh, and I'm baked now, and we'll get to that. Quick disclaimer. Some names and details have been changed to protect the guilty. For legal reasons. But everything I'm telling you is based on my real experience. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a cybersecurity expert. I'm just a woman who got royally screwed and decided to turn it into a public service announcement with hopefully better production values. So 2017, let me just set the scene for you. I'm living in the East Village. And if you don't know New York City, the East Village is the kind of neighborhood where you essentially step over guys that are selling vintage porn magazines to get to the pretty much the best pierogi in the Western Hemisphere. I moved into my building in December of 1995. And at that point, there were 27 units, all of which were rent stabilized, which basically means they can only raise your rent by a small percentage depending on the length of your lease, generally speaking, between 2 and 5%. All 27 units in that building were rent stabilized in 1995, and it was the kind of place where you knew your neighbors. You knew their dogs, you knew whose cooking smelled amazing and whose smelled pretty much like a biohazard. My apartment was my home. It was my anchor. It was my sanctuary. And I was paying rent that by Manhattan standards was pretty much the equivalent of finding a unicorn in your bathtub. Now, my downstairs neighbor, who I only ever called Paula in 3D, and I appreciate the layers of that moniker because her personality was essentially a 3D version of self-pitying deflection and projection. For 30 years, 30 years, this woman was essentially the bane of my existence. She was the kind of neighbor who would complain about your footsteps while simultaneously playing accordion at midnight. Okay, she didn't actually play the accordion, but you get the energy. She once actually slipped a note under my door telling me to look into wall-to-wall carpeting because my footsteps were too heavy. Paula had once worked for the building owner, and that building owner, 2 words, incredibly shady. The kind of, shady where you pretty much need like SPF 5000 in order just to sit near him. At one point, Paula, at the owner's insistence, convinced me to file a renter's insurance claim for repairs to her apartment due to a plumbing leak from mine. The amount that was charged to my insurer far exceeded the actual repair costs, and the repairs weren't even my responsibility. I subsequently got dropped by my insurer, just like that. And here's the kicker that I wouldn't understand for years. That renter's insurance, it would have covered me for identity theft. Getting me dropped was step 1. Step 1. And I had no idea. Now back to Martin. The night of the battering ram, I'm looking through my peephole, and yeah, I realize that that's probably the most New York sentence I have ever uttered. And I see these 3 guys who clearly aren't, selling Girl Scout cookies, bust down Martin's door. The next day, Paula in 3D tells me that Martin had had a heart attack in his shower and died. Just like that. Just like that. Casual as you please. Like she's telling me the deli across the street is out of turkey. Now, Martin's death meant something bigger than losing a neighbor. It meant that there were now only 4 rent-stabilized apartments left in that 27-unit building. In 1995, when I moved in, all of those 27 units were rent-stabilized. By 2017, 4. Do the math on that. Actually, let me do the math for you. That's 23 apartments flipped to market rate in a neighborhood where market rate for a 1-bedroom apartment had blown past $3,000 a month. And here's what I would eventually piece together. Removing long-term rent-stabilized tenants, people who had lived there for decades, people who knew each other, people who would notice if something weird was happening. That was step 2. You can't steal someone's identity if their neighbors are watching. So you get rid of the neighbors first. Also in 2017, because apparently the universe has an incredibly strange sense of humor sometimes and piles things on, I was staying at a Marriott hotel in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. It was the day my mother died. I know. And on that day of all days, my data was breached. The Marriott data breach. You might remember it or have read about it or heard about it. It was one of the biggest hotel data breaches in history. I wouldn't find out until about 14 months after discovering my identity theft that family members, my own family members, sibling and extended family members, and a few former close friends were responsible for what was done to me. But that's a story for later episodes. Right now, I just need you to understand the foundation that was being laid. Step 1, eliminate my insurance safety net. Step 2, remove the witnesses, my neighbors. Step 3, breach my data on one of the worst days of my life. And I didn't see any of it coming because, frankly, who does? Who, sits there eating takeout tofu Penang curry in their East Village apartment thinking, gee, I bet someone is orchestrating a multi-year identity theft scheme against me right now. Nobody. That's who. But here's why I'm telling you this. Because the signs were there. They were subtle. They were deniable. They were wrapped in the perfectly reasonable explanations that toxic people are so good at providing. And if I can help you see those signs before they snowball into what happened to me, then every humiliating, infuriating, soul-crushing minute of this experience will have been worth something. Okay, so I'm going to ask you to put your learning hats on for a minute. I was an adjunct faculty member at a somewhat noteworthy university for a dozen years. So yeah, that's a real thing I'm asking you to do. Deal with it. What happened to me didn't start with someone hacking into my computer at 3 a.m. It started with an insurance claim. And that's something I really need you to understand, because identity theft doesn't always look like identity theft. Here's how the playbook works. And I've learned this the hard way, so you don't have to. First, and I cannot stress this enough, identity thieves start by removing your safety nets. Insurance, credit monitoring, trusted relationships. They want you exposed before they strike. So if someone is pressuring you to file an insurance claim that feels off, or if you're being asked to do financial things that benefit someone else at your expense, that is a red flag the size of the state of Texas. Second, isolation. In my case, it was physical. It was removing neighbors from my building. But it can also be social. Ask yourself this: are people in your life slowly cutting you off from your support network? Are you being portrayed as difficult, clingy, or even unreliable to the people who would normally have your back? If that's happening to you, pay attention. Third, data breaches. Look, we've all gotten those emails. We regret to inform you that your data may have been compromised. And most of us sigh, change a password, and go back to scrolling or doom scrolling. But if you are also experiencing the first two things, a data breach isn't just bad luck anymore. It's an opportunity that someone might exploit. So here's your homework. And yes, there's homework. Did I mention I was a faculty member? This isn't just for entertainment. The things I want you to do: number 1, check your insurance policies right now, whether that's renter's insurance or homeowner's insurance, and find out whether there is a clause in your policy that includes identity theft coverage. If someone has talked you into dropping it, or if you have let it lapse, reinstate that today. 2, go to a website called haveibenpwned.com. That's PWNED. Because, hackers think they're hilarious. What you're going to do there is you're going to check if your email has been part of a data breach. And if it has, change your passwords. Write them down. on a piece of paper and keep that piece of paper in a safe place, and enable two-factor authentication. Authenticators like Proton makes a really good one. Also, setting up passkeys on, if you use Gmail, setting up a passkey on your Gmail account is probably the most secure thing you can do. Number 3, and this is probably the hardest thing, but take a long, hard look at anyone in your life who benefits from you being less protected. I know that probably sounds a bit paranoid. I thought I was paranoid too. I wasn't. Okay, so deep breath. We're going to do something I started doing when my life started falling apart and I had to relocate because I lost my home. But it turned out to be one of the best decisions that I have ever made. We're going to talk about baking. Yep, baking. See, when everything around you is chaos, when you can't trust your phone, your email, your family, or your mailbox, because in my case I had mail fraud and mail theft, there is something profoundly grounding about measuring flour, about cracking eggs. That part is incredibly satisfying sometimes. But it's about pulling something warm and beautiful out of the oven and knowing that you made that. Nobody stole it. Nobody spoofed it. It's yours. So baking essentially became my therapy, my source of meditation, and eventually it also became my way of rebuilding community. Because when you show up with things like fresh chocolate banana bread, people talk to you. They trust you, or they start to trust you. And in a world where my trust had been shattered, that meant everything to me. So every episode, I'm going to share a recipe with you. And today, it's a good one to start with: chocolate banana bread. All of the recipes I'm going to share with you are actually really simple. They use very few ingredients. Generally stuff you're going to find that you already have in your pantry. So chocolate banana bread, the recipe will be posted, the link to it will be posted on the YouTube channel for Everyone Wants to Be Me, Identity Theft Blows. Eventually I will also launch a Substack, and the recipes will also be posted there. But make that chocolate banana bread. Bring it to someone. And you'll see their face light up, and that is incredibly, soul nourishing. And remember this one little piece of advice from me, which is the best revenge against people who tried to take everything from you, is living well and eating better. All right, so let's bring this home. Here's what we covered today. My name is Grace Elizabeth Mangum. I've been the victim of a sustained AI-enabled identity theft orchestrated by people I knew and trusted. It started with the seemingly small, a shady insurance claim, a neighbor's death, a hotel data breach. And it built into something that took my apartment, my finances, my savings, and nearly took my sanity. But I'm still here, and I'm loud, and I'm proud, and I flip and bake. So, here are your action items for this week. Number 1, check your renter's or your homeowner's insurance and make sure that identity theft is covered. Number 2, run your email through haveibeenpwned.com and see if your email address has been involved in a data breach. Number 3, and like I said, this is probably the hardest one, but start paying attention to who in your life wants you less protected. Next episode, we're going to talk about the friend who pretty much took me everywhere and then ditched me when we got there. The episode is called You're My New Best Friend, but Not Really. And honey, if you've ever been someone's +1 prop you're going to feel this one. So if this episode resonated with you, and let's be honest, if you've ever had a terrible neighbor, hopefully it did. Share this episode with someone that you care about, because identity theft doesn't just happen to other people. It happens to people like me. It can happen to people like you. Subscribe to this podcast on YouTube. Leave a review. Tell a friend. Check the show notes, because I'm going to be including identity theft resources, reporting hotline information, and of course that chocolate banana bread recipe. I'm Grace Mangum. Everyone wants to be me, and honestly, I wouldn't recommend it. See you next episode.